All right, welcome back. We are going to do another video lesson about the master skills, and this is about the independent speaking task 2. This is the one about the personal preference. All right, so in the last lesson, you noticed that the tricks and traps for this particular speaking task are exactly the same as the personal experience task. There aren't really any tricks. In other words, there aren't any things that the makers of the exam do with this one to try to trick you. They simply want you to follow the directions exactly and to give a response based upon the information that you give. So the only traps that you would have are not giving sufficient reasons and examples to support your response, not properly fulfilling the task, in other words, by talking about things unrelated, or by not making very much sense with your answer, like the ideas just don't come together very well. The only way that this would really happen is if your English level is not high enough to take the TOEFL exam, or if maybe you just got confused and disoriented in the testing room. But that's not going to happen with any of the TOEFL Excellence students, so we don't need to worry about that. The other thing is not developing your response, and that ties into not giving enough reasons and examples. If you just simply list information. Now this one, it's not necessarily all that possible with the second speaking task, but it could be. Now if a person just starts speaking about why they would choose one preference, but they don't mention anything about the preference or the choice that they didn't choose, then it could be something like that, where they're just simply listing information. And then the other things, finishing your response too early or not finishing your response in time. Those are about the only things that you could get trapped with on this particular task type. So that is why we don't have a tricks and traps video specifically, because I just wanted to mention them here in this video. All right, so for the master skills with this particular task, there aren't as many as with the first one, even though the structure and almost like the form of your response will basically be the same. There aren't as many things that you can do to totally master this particular task type. Like with the personal experience, there were a lot of things that you could think about beforehand. For this one, it's very simple. You simply need to pick one of the choices that you'll speak about as your preference, because there's a good chance that they might ask you something where you don't even have a preference about that situation. So don't spend any time thinking about it. That's the most important thing about the TOEFL Excellence Training System, is to put you into a position where when you go into the exam, you don't have to think about any of your responses or answers. You simply just do it because you've already practiced it and you know exactly how to do it. So if you don't have a preference on the particular situation that they ask you about, simply pick one. Pick the first one, pick the second one, doesn't matter, just pick one of them and speak about it as if it is your preference. Now, if you do have a preference on whatever they're asking about, that will probably make it easier. But once you pick one, just try to think of one good thing and one bad thing about each of the choices that they give. Now, I mentioned here that if you can't think of one good and one bad thing for each choice, that's okay. This just gives you more options of what you can talk about if you have a good thing and a bad thing for each one. Because one of the best ways that you can go about responding to this task is to start by talking about the option that you didn't choose. And you would do this by talking about the good thing about it. Now, the reason I say this is a better one is because in giving your response this way, it's showing more complex English skills, because you're contrasting the ideas within your answer. Now, this one, where you talk about the option that you prefer and give your reasons and then say the bad thing about the one option that you didn't choose, that's perfectly fine too. But this one would not require as much of a complex sentence structure as this one. And that's why I say this one would be better. And I give an example here of just a basic structure. It would say something like, although some people might prefer the first option because, and then you talk about the good thing about it, I would prefer the other option because of the good thing about that. And then, give an example or an explanation depending on how much time you have. Like with the example about moving far away from home to get a better paying job, or staying closer to home and accepting a lower paying job. So using this structure, you could say, although some people might prefer to move far away from home so that they can earn more money, I would prefer to stay closer to home because family is much more important to me. And with the good support of family, then it might be easier to save money. And that's why I would prefer to stay closer to home. Now, I didn't time that response. I just wanted to give you a basic structure of how you could answer that. With this one, using the same example, you would just say, well, I would definitely prefer to stay closer to home because family is really important to me. And with the help of family, it might be easier to save money. So making more money when you're far away from home might not be very beneficial because it would be more expensive to live in a place that you're unfamiliar with. And that's why I would choose to stay closer to home. So you can see that you can give a perfectly good answer choosing either way. It just seems to me, and this is my own personal opinion, that this particular option, if you can think of a good thing about the option you didn't prefer, it seems to be a little bit more of a higher level of English when you do give your answer this way. But ultimately, either way is perfectly fine. So it's really up to you, whichever your preferred option is. And by preferred option here, I mean which one of these styles you want to choose to deliver your response. And then once you do that, just practice as many times as possible with the examples that you do have. We have a few examples in this course, and there are plenty of other examples that are on the internet and even on the blog. And, so as I mentioned in a previous lesson, the most important thing about practicing these types of responses is not that you practice as many different possible types or possible different questions. The most important thing is that you pick one example and you practice answering that one example question or task as many times as you possibly can until you have it down perfectly so that you can have a response that's almost exactly 45 seconds, like 44 and a half seconds, without even having to look at the clock. That way, when you get a different question, which is similar, you'll already know in your body and in your mind exactly how long 45 seconds is. It gets to be so much a part of your experience that you could deliver a response. And without even looking at the clock, it'll be the perfect length, you'll have the perfect amount of information, and you'll have the perfect speed of your speaking. And so that's what I mean about practicing. So practicing with the clock, and then if you follow those directions, you're going to be just fine. You're going to completely master and dominate this particular task type. And really, that's it. So now it's on to the next speaking task. So we'll see you in that lesson. Thank you for stopping by, and have an excellent day.